A presentation of Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry's advocacy on lowering the cost of power in Cebu. The mandate of Cebu Chamber has always been to advocate and promote business competitiveness amidst a globally challenging and disruptive economic environment. As the voice of business in Cebu, it represents more than 1,000 member companies and sectors, including the voiceless MSMEs, looking at their growth and vulnerabilities, and in this case, the millions of power consumers, most especially during this unprecedented time of COVID-19 pandemic. To lower the cost of doing business by lowering cost of power will help the ailing businesses towards recovery and will attract more investors, which in turn will generate more employment opportunities for the Cebuanos. In October 2019, a survey was conducted among the members of the Cebu Chamber who identified the enablers and obstacles directly impacting the business competitiveness of Cebu. The second top obstacle to doing business identified was the high cost of utilities, particularly power. Cebu has always complained of its electricity rates being the highest in the country. This was proven true by the Energy Regulatory Commission's press release in December 2020, when it quoted no less than ERC chairperson and CEO Agnes de Venadera, giving a generation range of 3 pesos and 95 cents to 5 pesos and 9 cents per kilowatt hour, which the maximum value was exactly the same as the generation rate of VECO for that month. So, this proves that Cebu indeed has the highest power rate in the Philippines. For VECO's Manila counterpart, Meralco, we have seen a reduction of its electricity rates in the first quarter of 2021, perhaps when coal prices were down, peso was strong, and weather was good. However, VECO's electricity rates kept on increasing month after month, even with the ongoing negotiations to lower rates with the Cebu Chamber. Cebu basically has been suffering from an average electricity rate of 12 pesos per kilowatt hour, the highest in the country. This has compelled the CCCI to conduct an in-depth study on Cebu power in November 2019 and has found several gray areas that could be factors to Cebu's high cost of electricity. The issues uncovered by the study are, first, the cross-ownership, market power abuse, and anti-competitive behavior of Visayan Electric. Second, VECO's bilateral power supply contracts with its associated firms is violative of the Philippine Competition Act. And third, the non-transfer of ownership of the Cebu private corporations plan to VECO despite the build-operate transfer agreement and its excessive rates. On issue number 1, cross-ownership, market power abuse, and anti-competitive behavior of VECO. RA 9136, Electric Power Industry Reform Act, or the IPIRA Law's Safeguard to Managing Cost of Power, is a provision that says distribution utilities are prohibited from sourcing more than 50% of its total power demand from bilateral contracts with its associated generation companies. Examining the power supply mix of VECO in 2019, it sources power from 6 generation companies and the wholesale electricity spot market, or WESM. Out of the 6, 5 are identified to be affiliates of VECO, referencing the General Information Sheet from the Securities and Exchange Commission. What are these VECO-affiliated generation companies? First, we have the Aboitiz Energy Solutions Incorporated. AESI is a wholly owned company of Aboitiz, which in turn is the controlling stockholder of both VECO and TVI. Its power supply contract was pre-terminated in 2019. Second is the Vivant Energy Corporation, which holds all of the Vivant Corporation's interests, which has 34.81% shares of VECO. Its power supply contract was also pre-terminated in 2019. Third is Cebu Power Private Corporation. VECO is a controlling stockholder of CPPC since it directly holds 71.46% of CPPC's total shares. Fourth is the Therma Visayas Incorporated. Both TVI and VECO are controlled by Aboitiz Power, which owns 68.14 shares of TVI while it owns 55.25% of VECO. And lastly is the Cebu Energy Development Corporation. The major shareholders of CEDC are Global Formosa Power Holdings Incorporated, which holds 56% of its total shares, and the Abovant Holdings Incorporated, owning 44% shares of CEDC. Abovant is 60% owned by the Aboitiz Power Corporation and 40% owned by Vivant Energy Corporation. While Aboitiz Power Corporation has a controlling stake in VECO, it only has 26.40% indirect ownership of CEDC. Also, Vivant only has 17.60 shares in CEDC. The only non-affiliate generation company VECO is sourcing its power from is Green Core Geothermal, and of course there is the WESM. This chart illustrates the combined percentage of power VECO purchased from its 5 affiliated generation companies from 2019 to 2021. The red straight demarcation line is the 50% EPIRA threshold on sourcing power from affiliated companies that distribution utilities should not violate, while the line graph are the values of the combined percentage of power VECO purchased from ESI, VEC, TVI, CPPC, and CEDC. Clearly, these values are situated on top of the demarcation line, which means that VECO has been sourcing more than 50% of its power from its affiliated companies. The conclusion we derived from this statement of facts is that legally, VECO violated the very intention of the Republic Act 9136 or the EPIRA law for having sourced more than 50% of its total power demand from associated and directly owned firms. In totality, VECO's contracts with its affiliated generation companies is anti-competitive and goes against the policy on promoting efficiency of market competition, considering that VECO enjoys a dominant position controlling the power distribution sector within its franchise area. On issue number 2, VECO's bilateral power supply contracts with its associated firms is violative of the Philippine Competition Act, which is the primary competition policy of the Philippines for promoting and protecting a competitive market. It prohibits the abuse of dominant position, such as directly or indirectly imposition of unfair purchase or selling price on their competitors, customers, suppliers, or consumers. The study argued that VECO enjoys a dominant position since it in fact controls the power distribution sector within its franchise area. Based on the published generation cost for power purchased from the different IPPs and the wholesale electricity spot market, it would seem that on June of 2019, VECO purchased 19.49% of its supply requirement from its affiliate Therma Visayas Incorporated at a generation cost of 7 pesos and 71 cents per kilowatt hour, and purchased a similar amount of 19.56% of its supply requirement from the cheaper WESM at only 5 pesos and 98 cents per kilowatt hour. In a more in-depth investigation, similar incidents can be observed in January to April and November 2020 generation rates, where the lion's share of the total kilowatt per hour purchased went to TVI at 37.15% with rate of 5 pesos and 75 cents per kilowatt hour, while the cheapest source WESM with 1 peso and 25 cents per kilowatt hour only at 23.79% purchased. This shows a significant difference between the generation costs of VECO-affiliated power producer as compared with that of WESM and non-VECO-affiliated power producer, as explained above, and may indicate that VECO, through its affiliated companies, has been imposing unfair selling prices on its customers and consumers, and may indicate an ongoing collusion between VECO and its IPP affiliates. The third issue is the non-transfer of ownership of the Cebu Private Power Corporation's plant to VECO despite the build-operate transfer agreement and its excessive rates. The CPPC is supposed to turn over the plant to VECO in 2013 and for VECO to operate the same when its power supply agreement expired in 2013. Yet, VECO still passes on charges to the consumers for the construction and maintenance of the Ermita plant, which have already been transferred to VECO by CPPC. The study argues that the capital recovery fee for building the CPPC plant under a 15-year build-operate transfer agreement, which charges commenced in 1997 with the CPPC VECO power supply agreement, should have been recovered upon termination of its power supply agreement in 2013. Because of this, Cebuanos continued to pay 66 million per month or roughly 800 million pesos per year in capital recovery fees since 2013 to September 2021, just last year beyond the expiration of its power supply agreement. In addition, the CPPC's excessive generation rate that ranges from 26 pesos to as high as 1,470 pesos per kilowatt hour can really boggle the mind of the consumers. The CPPC facility should have been considered owned by the consumers. These arguments were proven true by the ERC's letter to the CCCI dated July 5, 2021, which revealed that VECO has no ERC-approved power supply agreement with CPPC. It has an application in 2013, but it was never approved nor implemented. The CCCI further learned during the ERC hearing on VECO's over-under recoveries application, where the CCCI is an intervener of, that the CPPC has been providing power to VECO on the basis of a casual letter signed by then ERC chairperson Zenaida Ducot, allowing extension of its 1997 power supply agreement. To give you a comprehensive background, a timeline of communication of CCCI's advocacy on lowering the cost of power will be presented in the succeeding slides. In November 2019, a committee within CCCI was created and studied the power rates of different distribution utilities in the country and recommended to the CCCI board to write the Philippine Competition Commission of its findings. In December 2019, a draft unsigned letter addressed to the PCC questioning Visayan Electric Company on various issues uncovered by the study was presented to then VECO President and COO Anton Marie Perdices and triggered the start of CCCI and VECO conversations and meetings, both official and offline. Among the issues raised in that draft unsigned letter was the cross-ownership, market power abuse, and anti-competitive behavior of VECO. On January 8, 2020, during CCCI Power and Energy Committee meeting, VECO President and COO Anton Marie Perdices formally turned over his responsibilities to Engineer Raul Lucero and announced the pre-termination of their contracts with their affiliates Aboitiz Energy Solutions Incorporated and Vivant Energy Corporation in order to significantly reduce the rates. On January 25, 2020, the CCCI formally wrote VECO a letter informing them of the decision to put on hold the transmission of the PCC letter until a favorable outcome from the discussions on lowering the cost of power in Cebu is arrived at. On February 10, 2020, a formal meeting between CCCI and VECO, represented by President and CEO Engineer Raul Lucero, and Aboitiz Power Distribution Utilities Senior Vice President and COO Anton Marie Perdices, took place in the CCCI office, where the latter addressed a series of questions prepared by CCCI, particularly on high cost of power relative to generation cost. The agreements reached during that meeting was for VECO to provide information and update to the Chamber with their plans and continuing actions to reduce power in Cebu. On June 1, 2020, the CCCI resumed communication with VECO through a letter which questions the high cost of power during the enhanced community quarantine and requesting for a report on their plans and continuing actions in order to achieve the ultimate goal of bringing down the cost of power. VECO responded in a letter dated June 4, 2020 via email. On June 27, 2020, the CCCI wrote VECO a letter citing questionable data published in their website, particularly on the issue of meeting fair and reasonable determination and selection of VECO's power source, which is a major factor to the high cost of electricity. The issues raised in that letter was first, VECO buying power from the expensive CPPC at 106 pesos and 17 cents per kilowatt hour, and second, VECO buying more from affiliate Thermavisais Incorporated at 4 pesos and 77 cents per kilowatt hour instead of purchasing power from WESM, despite its significantly low rates at around 1 to 2 pesos per kilowatt hour for the past months. VECO responded in a letter dated July 13 via email, which explained the fixed and variable costs and that they are using the software Quantrisk to determine which power producer and how much power to purchase. On September 14, 2020, the CCCI, together with the Mandaue Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Philippine Retailers Association Cebu, Filipino-Chinese Chamber of Commerce, and the Cebu Business Club met with VECO at their headquarters to reiterate the issues of a high cost of electricity in Cebu, most especially during the quarantine period. The agreements reached during that meeting was for VECO to waive the guaranteed minimum billing demand during the ECQ and instead bill using the actual usage. And second, VECO will consider downgrading the customer classification with different rates in commercial and wholesale schedules. As a result, an advisory was released to the membership of the different business organizations. In November 19, 2020, the CCCI expressed its strong support to the continued implementation of the ARCOA, which will lower the threshold or the average monthly peak demand to cover end users and allow them to contract with any licensed or authorized suppliers of electricity on a voluntary basis. It was also in this letter that the CCCI sought the assistance of the ERC to find solutions to bringing down the cost of power Cebu and help business recover and strive from the negative effects of the pandemic, since the ERC is the agency mandated to monitor and regulate the prices of power. The letter was acknowledged by the ERC on the same day but was not responded to. On November 19, 2020, the CCCI wrote VECO, copy furnishing ERC a letter requesting the latter to shed light on the allegations raised in an article published by a Manila-based consumer group Matuwid na Singil sa Kuryente, and VECO's continuing preference of purchasing power from expensive affiliate power generators. The issues raised in that letter is first, the excessive reserve capacity of Cebu Private Power Corporation, second, the non-transfer of ownership of the CPPC plant to VECO despite the build-operate transfer agreement. Third, that Cebu Energy Development Corporation is technically an associated firm of VECO. And fourth, selection of power supply source, procuring more power from expensive affiliate generation company rather than taking advantage of low SM prices. The CCCI received VECO's reply in the morning of December 7, where VECO argued that the CPPC VECO 2013 PSA was ERC approved and that CPPC is for voltage support and backup source of power for Cebu, and that the Aboitiz Power does not have a controlling interest with CEDC, and that they are using the software Quantrisk to determine which power producer and how much power to purchase. On November 25, 2020, the CCCI sent the Regional Development Council 7 and the Office of the Presidential Assistant for the Visayas a letter regarding the high cost of electricity in Cebu, raising the same issues. The RDC 7 wrote ERC and relayed the issues of CCCI. On January 4, 2021, the ERC responded to this letter by issuing a directive to VECO demanding an explanation of its high cost of power. VECO responded through a letter dated January 12, to which the CCCI did not receive any copy of, not until late February when asked. On December 10, 2020, the Office of the Presidential Assistant for the Visayas organized a meeting between VECO, represented by Mr. Joaquin Aboitiz, Vice President for Corporate Services at Aboitiz Power, Engineer Raul Lucero, and Mr. Anton Marie Perdices, and different business membership organizations participated by CCCI President Felix Tagyam, VP J. Uvalios, Mandawi Chamber President Stephen Alain Yu, PRA Cebu Chapter President Chester Lim, CFCCC Board Member Rodrigo Go, and Filipino Cebu Business Club Chairman Ray Calooy. OPAV directed VECO to do something to bring down the cost of power in Cebu, but was never materialized. On January 20, 2021, the CCCI sent the Office of the Senator Sherwin Gatchalian a letter regarding the high cost of electricity in Cebu and to seek support from the Senator by championing CCCI advocacy at the national level. It was acknowledged by Attorney Teresa Ira Maris Gonzon, Director for the Energy Committee of the Office of Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, on January 7, and it was followed through a Zoom meeting on February 11. On January 25, 2021, the CCCI finally sent the PCC a letter regarding the cross-ownership, market power abuse, and anti-competitive behavior of VECO and its associated generation companies. It was acknowledged and followed through with an MS meetings on February 11 with a team from PCC Abuse of Dominance Division. On February 5, 2021, the CCCI met with the Aboitiz Group, represented by Aboitiz Power Senior Vice President for Regulatory Affairs and External Relations, Mr. Donel Aboitiz, Assistant Vice President for External Relations, Wilfredo Rodolfo III, and Mr. Joaquin Aboitiz at the CCCI boardroom to discuss how to bring down the cost of power and in turn make Cebu more competitive. The agreements reached during that meeting was for the Aboitizes to find a way to renegotiate the two power supply agreements of the CPPC and the Green Core Geothermal that are expiring. And second, for VECO to go through the competitive selection process and see what alternatives they could find. A 6-month period was asked by the Aboitiz before Cebu can see lowered electricity rates. However, this promise was never materialized. On March 3, 2021, the CCCI transmitted the letter of appeal to the ERC for the review of the Visayan Electric Company's power supply agreement with Cebu Private Power Corporation in 2013. The issues raised in that letter is first, the actual implementation of the 2013 VECO CPPC PSA is contrary to the requirement of the IPIRA law that distribution utilities should supply electricity in the least cost manner to its captive market. Second, CPPC's generation rates in relation to least cost principle. And third, VECO's PSA application does not provide any basis for the collection of capital recovery fees. This was acknowledged by ERC on the same day, but it was never responded to. On March 24, 2021, the CCCI wrote a letter to ERC regarding changes made to the Visayan Electric Company's published generation data in its website. CCCI believed in the data found in the website of VECO because its figures are exactly consistent to the figures billed to the consumers. Therefore, any changes made to it without any notice and explanation would easily cast doubt on the factualness and truthfulness of the charges billed to the consumers, as indicated in the billing statements. This was acknowledged by the ERC but was not responded to. On April 13, 2021, the CCCI met with the officers of the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry with the presence of ERC and DOE officials to discuss CCCI's power advocacy and ERC's non-response to CCCI communication. On April 15, 2021, the ERC wrote a directive to VECO demanding explanation to the issues raised by the Chamber, particularly on the requested review of VECO's power supply agreement with Cebu Private Power Corporation in 2013. A virtual meeting between the parties was held on April 26. On April 20, 2021, VECO furnished CCCI its response letter to the ERC directive. On April 26, 2021, the ERC conducted a virtual pre-hearing conference between CCCI and VECO in response to the Chamber's request to review VECO's PSA with CPPC in 2013. During this hearing, ERC Legal Service Director Attorney Maria Corazon Hines identified affiliated company to be having common shareholders, or if there are ownership shares between two companies. She further stated that there should be no relationship whatsoever from the stock holdings between the company. This confirmed that Cebu Energy Development Corporation is indeed an affiliated firm of VECO by definition of ERC. On June 23, 2021, the CCCI supplemental letter to ERC regarding VECO's violation of the IPIRA law, which prohibits sourcing of more than 50% of its total power demand from associated firms, was transmitted to ERC and the Philippine Competition Commission. On July 14, 2021, the CCCI received via email ERC's letter dated July 5, 2021 in response to the Chamber's letter dated March 3, 2021 with the subject CCCI appeals to the ERC for the review of VECO's power supply agreement with CPPC in 2013. On July 16, 2021, the CCCI received via email Philippine Competition Commission's notice, which contains their assessment to the issues raised by the Chamber, where it said that they will refer the matter to the agency in charge, which is the ERC. On July 26, 2021, the CCCI sent a letter of request to ERC for specification of its July 5 letter, for us to be sufficiently informed on the action that was brought. This was acknowledged by the ERC but was not responded to. On August 2021, the CCCI appointed Attorney Edison John Ariola as legal counsel to represent during the ERC hearing on case number 2021-003CF in the matter of application of the confirmed and approval of over and under recoveries for the years 2021 to 2022 of VECO. On August 19, 2021, the CCCI participated in first ERC virtual hearing for ERC case number 2021-003 of VECO's over and under recoveries application, where the determination of compliance with jurisdictional requirements and expository presentation took place via MS Teams. All in all, the CCCI has intervened in 5 virtual hearings of ERC for VECO's over-under recovery application, which took place between August to October 2021 via MS Teams. It was during these hearings where the CCCI found out that VECO has been sourcing its power to CPPC on the basis only of a one-page letter signed by then ERC chairperson Zenaida Ducot. So, on September 21, 2021, CCCI sent ERC a letter of inquiry on the extension of VECO CPPC power supply agreement in 2013 by virtue of Ducot letter, and sent them another letter on October 26, 2021, regarding CPPC's continuous charging in September 2021 as reflected in the generation rate of VECO website, and at the same time followed up on the September 2021 letter of the Chamber. To give you a background, the over and under recoveries are charges incurred in view of the difference between the actual and the estimated cost of the charges. VECO has 2 pending over-under recovery application. One in 2018, which covers the years 2015 to 2017, amounting to 442 million pesos. And the recent 2021, where CCCI intervened, which covers the years 2018 to 2020, amounting to 46 million pesos. If these 2 pending OU applications get the approval of the ERC, expect a total of 489 million peso charge in your billings on top of your monthly consumption. VECO's monthly electricity rate is already very high. Added this charge, if approved, will cause even more suffering to Cebuano consumers. This is the very reason CCCI intervened in the 2021 case, to make sure that the consumers are charged for their electricity correctly and reasonably. To date, we await the decision of ERC on these 2 cases. The ERC hearings were also the avenue and an opportunity for CCCI to raise some of the issues it has been writing ERC about, because since 2019, CCCI has sent a total of 8 correspondence directly to ERC, but only 2 of which were replied to. And it was only on November 25, 2020, when CCCI engaged the Regional Development Council Economic Development Committee, who wrote ERC to act on the issues raised by the Chamber. We saw in the press that ERC readies report on Visayan Electric's alleged high power rates, but we never got this report to this very day. From the beginning, CCCI's appeal was simple: for the Cebuano consumers to have a reasonable cost of electricity, which means a full and true exercise of the competitive selection process of the VECO power supply contracts, and the transparency in the power industry, and a regulatory agency that will serve to the best interest of the consumers. However, CCCI's intentions are met with trollings in its Facebook page and negative, baseless press articles written by top media personalities in Cebu. The pressure started between 2020 to 2021, when several attempts have been made by the Aboitiz camp to obtain the list of the CCCI Board of Trustees, including using a reporter and connecting directly to CCCI second-liners. On October 30, 2021, a series of negative statements directed at IPP Nonoy Espeleta were commented in an article about BBEMP posted in the Facebook page of the Chamber. All commenters hail from Tagum, Davao, and upon checking their profiles, they all seem like accounts run by a single individual for the purpose of trolling. One account was seen sharing an Aboitiz post. On November 20, 2021, another series of negative statements directed at IPP Nonoy Espeleta were commented on a photo posted in CCCI and CBM Facebook pages. On December 22, 2021, came the Freeman opinion titled Emergencies, a Time to Eat Humble Pie for Some by Jerry Tundag, where the Chamber is criticized for its years of hounding VECO and CPPC. On January 9, 2020, came out a Sunstar opinion titled Bribery in Power Restoration by Bobby Nalzaro, where the Chamber was accused of taking credit for the power restoration after Typhoon Odette, specifically on bringing Meralco to Cebu. On February 2, 2022, came out the Freeman opinion titled Old and Sputtering Cebu Chamber Needs Drastic Overhaul by Jerry Tundag, where the Chamber is accused of losing focus on its main job of putting business up front by promoting and enhancing the environment in which it can thrive and taking the community along with it in progress and development. Despite all of these, the Cebu Chamber of Commerce and Industry continues its advocacy on power as it hopes to see the day that Cebuanos can enjoy a low and reasonable electricity rate. Thank you.